Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And thank you for your patience as we always seem to have a challenge or two when it comes to getting everything set up the way it's supposed to, and always seems to be one thing or another that wants to complicate this gathering. And I appreciate everybody that gets together with us every week. It is always a blessing and a tremendous joy to catch up with you, especially as we talk about some of these things that, let's be honest, not everybody wants to chat about, some of these items, but we need to be abreast of what's going on and how they fulfill Bible prophecy. A lot of what we're seeing in the news today is, in fact, confirming the ancient scriptures, the ancient conflicts that we have seen resurface, which has been very interesting for me, especially. I mean, I don't know what the rest of you, but I find it fascinating that you're dealing with the same spirits, you're dealing with the same evil that was here 5,000 years ago. You're dealing with the same recycled, renamed, but the same thing over and over again. And I believe it's why one of the reasons why the word of Elohim is so consistent is because he is simply telling you what's going to happen if you keep going down these roads. And so civilization after civilization has found out, if you know what I mean. And, it's interesting. We were talking about this as people file in, and please share the link and encourage those of your friends and family to join us. As we see these things starting to unfold, we start to realize that everything that we were told about the last days was couched in a sort of Hollywood spectator perspective. Like you would be just watching it, and that sort of popcorn eating, sitting in the theater mentality has sort of kept people in a state of captivity, is the only word I can think of, when there really does need to be some more kinetic movement, especially as you realize that you are in a outright conflict that culminates with the coming of the king. So we started doing these reviews because people were saying to us, and I heard more times than I cared to note, I've checked out. I don't watch the news anymore. I don't watch any of these things anymore because I find them too disturbing or too much propaganda. And I completely understand that and respect that. I believe that in fact is true in many respects. There is a tremendous amount of propaganda and a tremendous amount of manipulation in the news that we are receiving, even the information that we get. But what we try to do is try to discern the spiritual implications of what we're seeing so that we can have an understanding of what we're looking at and how we can direct our affairs, if you will, how we can pray, how we can plan and schedule accordingly. If you're watching the situation unfolding in the middle of the United States with regard to the water situation, for example, then you're watching a slow-moving train wreck that is erupting. We just saw a video today that was posted in our discussion group that showed a film that you could literally scrape off the top of the water and accumulate in a spoon this film that came out of tap water. And so if you don't understand the warfare that you're in, then you'll be a victim of that warfare. I mean, it's just that simple, folks. It's just that simple. If you don't understand that you've been, for example, that there's poisons somewhere, and you walk out and you don't know about it. If you walk into a minefield, you're going to get blown up, right? If you walk into an area where you're not aware that there's poisons everywhere, you might pick something up, you might touch something. If you don't know it's radioactive, for example, your ignorance can be deadly, is my point. And so we need to be aware of what's going on, to the extent that we are not like the children of darkness who continue on as if no judgments are coming. We know better. We know that judgment has been rendered against the nations. This nation is no exception. And there are many things that we have to now be paying attention to. So getting into the news, let's get into some of these things that are coming on. And of course, just again, a reminder that for those that may not know, that are watching for the first time or will be catching up throughout the week, we have remnantwatch.com, and Remnant Watch is where we will be putting most of these headlines, if not all of the headlines that I go over on these weekly broadcasts, so that you can take a look at the actual articles themselves that we cover. And that is where you're going to find some more additional information. And of course, we're hoping you share the link and get more people watching Remnant Watch. It's a good way to get the summary without getting overwhelmed. I personally enjoy this format. I don't know about the rest of you, but I like this a lot because I don't necessarily want to read every story in depth. I can get a lot just from the headline and I can move on. If I feel like it, I can click on that link and I can dig deeper depending upon what's, drawing my interest and so forth. And the top story today that we're continuing to follow, we've actually been following this for the last couple of days because the ratcheting up has been considerable, and that China is, of course, making itself very clear that it is ready to take on Taiwan. And so this is something that President Trump did warn about and tell us about, that would be something to look for. And sure enough, we're seeing a certain ratcheting up. They're certainly spending a considerable amount of money, time, energy, and propaganda to let us know this. So why are they letting us know this? Well, to prepare us for conflict. China simulates hitting key targets on Taiwan. China has simulated precision strikes against key targets on Taiwan, its surrounding waters, during a second day of military drills. The drills, which Beijing has called a stern warning to the self-governing islands, are a response to Taiwan's president visiting the U.S. last week. And so, of course, you're seeing a rhetoric war, but these are the things that, generally speaking, sort of at a moment's notice become kinetic. So you can see something that you will maybe see for years going on the front pages of the news, and then all of a sudden it goes kinetic. So we always have to be aware of what's going on, right? And this situation going on in the South China Sea is, of course, of concern only because it can be the igniting of a greater conflict. So if China moves against Taiwan, there's a high likelihood that that effort will be coordinated with other efforts. Let me just put it like that. So it won't just be China attacks Taiwan. It will be China attacks Taiwan, and in other news. Okay. And that's what we need. That's why we need to be aware of this, because this may be an indicator of their preparedness for the other elements of their plan. And so if they're indicating a readiness to begin violent conflict with Taiwan, this also indicates to us, think in terms of military planning, think in terms of strategy, think in terms of multiple targets at once. And you can easily see how they would be gearing up to do multiple things at the same time. War is the number one way to alter society and make those alterations permanent. Okay, they have done extensive studies in this area, and their conclusions are irreversible. They are clear that it requires war to make irreversible change to society. Think about the attack on the towers in New York and the irreversible change that that did to your ability to go to the airport and get a ticket and fly somewhere. Irreversible change requires very dramatic actions, and they want to bring in some pretty irreversible changes. They want to bring in some one-way check valve type things that happen with respect to your liberties, with respect to your freedoms, with respect to your person, what you are in law, who you are, your standing, all kinds of things they want to do on a wholesale level, almost like they're in some giant hurry, as if their days were shortened somehow. So there's quite a bit of haste, which of course we all know makes waste, that is going on in this scenario. But make no mistake about it, China is making it clear that they're ready to fight. Okay, so they're projecting this message, um, which is essentially saying, again, if you take this and extend it to the other components, the other tentacles that are also connected with this tentacle. So if you're in a team, you wouldn't announce that you're ready to fight if the rest of your team wasn't also ready to go, if that makes sense. So this is one of the reasons why this saber rattling is of interest to us, because it indicates to us all that time is short for many additional prophecies to be fulfilled. The Psalm 83 conflict, which is uh, again probably cyclical, but nevertheless one that is looming large. You also have the Trans-Pacific conflict with the United States and the forces that are going to be aligned with China. And listen, folks, they're not a small number. Now they're considerable, because of the reality that the economic realignment has changed partnerships. And if you know anything about, the power of mammon, you know that people will switch for who's going to pay them, right? And what is money but what it gives you the ability to buy? So if you can go to China and spend yuan and buy all the luxuries of life, you don't care about any other currency. And so they are setting up their own systems there that will rival and exceed the systems of the West by a long shot. Their people numbers are excessively greater than the United States and the Western nations. So this threat was formidable, and now it is being launched in multiple ways. So again, China indicating in very strong language that it is ready to fight. And in the meantime, speaking of fighting, of course, we all know that there's great conflict still going on in the Eastern European theater, and there's rumors now that there's rumors on both sides, right? So you've got a propaganda war going on both sides. But what I believe is credible information is that the Ukrainian forces are suffering significant losses, and it will not be long before this conflict is resolved in a agreement that basically absorbs Ukraine back into Russia. And so this has been a grand distraction. If there were rumors that this was an attempt to establish a homeland for a certain group of people. That plan has utterly failed. So if that was the plan, that has failed. The effort to use Ukraine as a money laundering, the only way that money laundering system works is without attention. There's always the white handed white glove players that need the cover of deniability in order for them to be the partner that brings the tainted funds into the legitimate system. With all this light, you will no longer find white glove partners, if you understand what I'm saying, to continue this laundering effort. So this will dry up. And unfortunately, it almost looks like this is the grand getaway of many people that knew that their time was up, and they only had so much time to affect whatever way of change they could in the meantime. For example, we mentioned Francis Macron, right? And that he was going to be going to China. Well, he did in fact go to China. I was actually shocked. He went out on his own private jet, by the way, we found out. He did leave his co-partner, however, to fly commercial, but he had to fly private. I wondered how he was going to get out of the country. And Francis Macron ends trip to China with a pact to bolster business and military ties. So France comes away. What can you read out of this? The France has come away from begging China for help with making promises to China that and essentially what is occurring is you're going to get favorable encouragement from France to settle the conflict in Ukraine. Okay, so you're going to see this ramping up. And the reason for it is France is itself coming unglued. I mean, France is in no position to be popping smoke to anybody. The people in France have really had about enough. They are going after key, specific, sort of New World Order players. The Bank of France, for example, they're not just rioting and looting. They are very specific in targets that they are going after, and we're seeing the French people. This is in front of, I believe, BlackRock. The French people are very, very animated and are not interested in half measures at this point. So this is the animation level that I believe they want to generate, because again, you bring in the biggest changes with the biggest reactions. Okay. So you need big movement like this to bring in big societal change. The challenge that we have is we're having to deal with the reality that there are other forces that are guiding that change, right? So as I've told you many times, there's a competition for who is going to be in charge during the next millennium or the next movement, right? So you can see this clearly with the financial shifting that is occurring. What are they prepping for? Well, they're not prepping for the past, obviously. They're prepping for the future. They're prepping for what they believe will be the way of the future for the European Union, for the Eastern countries, and they have the numbers, folks. Okay, they have the numbers by a long shot. We're talking about a considerable portion of the world's population that will be now aligned with the BRIC nations, using their economic system to trade goods and services, to trade products. It will not be them adapting to your system. It will be you adapting to their system, because they will be leading it. Okay. And it is by sheer numbers, by sheer volume. Once, especially as these nations continue down the road toward their New World Order. And if you think the New World Order goes away because, the West gets defeated, like I said, it's just a competition of who's going to run it, okay? Of who's going to be in charge. Any Ukraine peace talk should be about New World Order, says Lavrov. Moscow wants any Ukraine peace talks to focus on creating a New World Order. Uh-oh. Look at this, guys. Looks like either way you shake it, you're running into the same bird. Oh, wow. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on a visit to Turkey on Friday. The top Russian diplomat was in Turkey, which has retained ties with both Moscow and Kiev, to hold talks with his Turkish counterpart, Mevlut Cavusoglu. He also threatened to abandon a landmark grain deal which Turkey helped broker if obstacles to Russian exports remain. So now there's considerable counter pressure that is going to be applied to countries that continue to apply these sanctions of the Western nations. Are you seeing what's setting up here? So you've got an economic war now. And this is very real, folks, because this now deals with grains and oil, and so bread and wine and supplies and things we need. And in case you didn't know this, the United States cannot export. We can import food goods. Yeah, they don't want our food goods. They don't want our stuff. And so that ought to scare you about our food supply. That ought to make you want to go do some homework and some research, which I strongly encourage you to do in the area of food and food fraud and food safety if you live in or depend on food from the United States of America. And it's getting worse because, again, that company that cans the tomato soup or cans the whatever they're putting in a can is not going to give a flying flip about the water quality that they're using to wash and or can those vegetables in their market. They are going to pump that thing go and go and go until someone shuts them down. So you won't know the damage that's being done by factories, by farms, by whatever, until it's too late. And this was the risk of an open, unwalled, unprotected food supply, open for all forms of contamination. We always knew this. We just, hadn't seen the day when it was actually weaponized against you. And what you're seeing now is that you're going to be dealing with the weaponization of poverty. And I really want to stop here for a second and just say this, because I really feel that a lot of folks are going to be seriously impacted by the weaponization of poverty. And what I mean by that is they're going to take advantage of what you don't know. Your ignorance will be your demise. Your lack of information, people perish for a lack of knowledge. And so because you think there's only one way to transfer or one way to do business or one way to communicate, or you're narrow in your viewpoints, they're able to control those entrances and exits. And this is why it is very important that you begin to expand your networks of communication, of supply, of interactive commerce. There's a legitimate commerce that we should conduct between one another. It should be a fair and just weight and measure, so Elohim looks down from heaven and does not put us under the same judgments he's putting the rest under, if you know what I mean. There's simplicity and generosity and kindness that should be manifested in the saints of light, separate from the world. And this is where your opportunities should come from. This is where the wind is blowing. And this is where I believe there's fortunes to be made. In the Great Depression, there were people that truly suffered. If you are anthropologically inclined at all, if you've done any historical review, anthropology is the study of human periods of time and understanding human conduct and the cycles of humanity, if you will. And so, humanity is cyclical. They go through cycles, and here we go again. And we're about to see this same type of poverty used as a weapon, weaponized poverty, because it's profitable for certain people to utilize that. And at the same time that people were in severe poverty during the Depression, there were also people who were also who made fortunes during this time period. How is that possible that you could have the same exact economic scenarios? Some people make fortunes, other people barely survive and look like skeletons when it's over. It is by limiting information, by limiting knowledge and what people know and the choices that they believe they have available to them. If you can constrict those choices, if you can make them believe they only have A or B, and they don't see the other things that they can do, they don't understand their other resources, they don't know their other opportunities, you can control them and cause them to choose in a false dichotomy and manipulate them. And this is how abusers do things all the time, right? They control their victims by giving them false choices, either this or this, that's it, when there's 500 other choices that they're not including. And so we need to be people that think outside of the limits, restrictions, boundaries, to not be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the renewing of our mind, to think as our Father in heaven has taught us to think, and to speak against these limited circumstances. And again, we're all going to be seeing this from the top down. I thought this story was interesting. Um, the Mexican president is coming to the defense of Donald Trump and calling the charges against him a smear campaign. So isn't this interesting? And I tell you, he's not wrong. This long lauded indictment that we all thought was going to be quite extensive turned out to be nothing more than a tabloid worthy nonsense that will fizzle to nothing probably very soon. So what were they distracting you from? Well, I believe what they're distracting you from is the house of cards that is just being destroyed right in front of you, and the avalanche of light that is coming for areas that they have never wanted or expected there to be light. House Oversight Committee is subpoenaing bank records, Biden family associates in probe of finances. So this commitment to light and exposure is definitely having an impact on the choices. And I believe this is one of the things that they were trying to hide from the news cycle and trying to reduce its impact. And this is why we're seeing a lot of shenanigans and um, sporting events, everything they can come up with, record setting sporting events, anything and everything, bread and circus that they can think of to distract you from to get, because again the impact, if you know that there's trouble coming, the impact is less than if it catches you completely by surprise. So think the power, the element of surprise, right? They want the maximum impact on society, so again that they can bring in the changes that they want to bring in post these dramatic actions. Okay, so this particular story tells you, though, that this isn't a joke. You're seeing the U.S. deploying guided missile submarines and tensions with Iran. And for those of you that may be aware of the Albert Pike prophecies concerning three world wars, the Third World War was to be provoked between Israel and the forces of Islam led by Iran. And so we've all watched this slow moving train wreck coming for some time. And Dubai, United Arab Emirates, U.S. Navy has deployed a guided missile submarine capable of carrying up to 154 Tomahawk parking lot maker missiles to the Middle East, a spokesman said Saturday, in what appears to be a show of force toward Iran following recent tensions. That is no small threat. These are no joke missiles. Take it from a Navy guy. You don't want a Tomahawk missile coming down on whatever building or wherever you are. You don't want Tomahawk missiles flying by your house, okay? And again, remember how the powers that ran the previous era did so through much intimidation and much force, and that is no longer working, folks. So attempts to go around the legal system by changing the UCC, for example, that drew too much attention and started to fizzle. Attempts to manipulate the legislature to make illegal alternative mechanisms of trade also falling down. I told you if it even survived the legislative process, in my estimation, in my opinion, it would not survive the first legal challenge. So it's dead on arrival. And I believe that they're going to try to go with the push rod method, the sort of ramrod, push it through, make you think it's required, make you think you have to, make you think you can't do something else, and get you to opt in to a system that you never really had to. And so this is why we have to have alternatives, saints. And this is what is coming for us. We're seeing the absolute intentional destruction of the US dollar. Don't think that this is accidental, folks. Don't think that this is some kind of surprise event that, oh, suddenly the dollar ran into these problems. No, a long time ago, these guys decided that they wanted to be, they've realized that this thing was going off the cliff, and they were just going to spend like drunken sailors until it finally did. And once it got in their brains that they were just going to reset it, and then they really went to town. Okay. The death of the dollar and the rise of the digital dollar is why central banks are buying gold and silver. It's important to note, and this is again an opinion piece that you'll find, but again, it's something that you need to understand, that what they're doing is trying to again lead and demonstrate their ability to lead into the future. Unfortunately, I believe there are too many alternatives that the average person has now come to knowledge of that will make their heavy-handed efforts appear exactly as such, which will make enforcement very difficult, especially if we go into a climate of outright conflict, kinetic conflict. So the bottom line is this: you're going to need alternative ways to transfer resources, to interact with one another, to buy and sell from one another that doesn't interact with the beast system, plain and simple. Because at some point, they're going to set it up so that you have to go through there to get certain things. Here's the thing, though. You're the remnant, the people, the people who live in the country, if you will, the people that live in a community, they're the suppliers of labor, expertise, materials. Everything really doesn't come from them. It really comes from the people. So any systems that begin to empower the people they're going to emerge very quickly. They know this. They know that they're going to be dealing with 1,000 different new ways for people to interact and do business if they try to squeeze everyone into one system right now. So their effort essentially will now fail because they needed the backdrop of a very hot kinetic war. They needed everything else to be so blown up and so beat up and so bad that you gladly jumped on board the new credit system, right? With the new ticka-ding, ticka-ding, and they could just zip, bing, boom, give you credits, right? But they could also take them away. and they then had control of you, right? And because if that's the only exclusive way you could buy gas or interact in some way with that merchant, then they have you. But if they don't have exclusive control, if their exclusivity has been interrupted, if innovation has come into the market, if multiple mechanisms of payment have now emerged in this theater of operations, if you will, they have a much more complicated war now, because any attempt to now manipulate the entirety of the population into one method, their control matrix method of commerce, will fail. Pressure alone will emerge and cause alternatives to emerge. And this is why we are not only preparing ourselves with some of our initiatives, very, very thankful for our team working on Shekel Mart, almost done with that. There's a mobile app being put together for that, so that's going to make that even easier for people to work together. This future is for collaboration. All you Lone Rangers are not going to be okay. I'm just telling you right now. Time to collaborate, time to connect, time to network, time to work together. Unity is where he commands the blessing, even life evermore. That was a huge hint. He's letting you know that's where I'm going to command my blessing. You want my blessing on you? You want to work with my blessing? You want to be in a place of blessing? You better be where people are dwelling together in unity. There's where he's going to command it. Okay. And so whether it's united in the way that we would be united, or there's other groups that are going to be uniting, maybe just on organic food, they're going to unite just on organic materials. They're going to unite on clean alternative methods for commerce or for equipment, for shipping, what have you. These will all be interactive with our network. Okay, these will all be sympathetic, if you will. They'll all be compatible with our network. And that's why it's important that we have networks and you connect together, because this is how you overcome. You cannot overcome by being a Lone Ranger digging a hole and hiding. That's not going to work. I'm just letting you know. And that's what they plan on doing. They put a bunch of food down in a ditch and they closed up the ditch, and now they're just going to hide in there until all of you die. And what I think is going to be laughable is when they come back out of their hole and they find, the thriving remnant, and they're now on the outside. Do you see how it's going to flip, folks? I'm just letting you know. I'm just telling you right now, everything flips before this is over. So it's going to be a very interesting time period that you're walking into. And again, these are days of light, right? So look at this story. The Pentagon is vowing to investigate after U.S. classified U.S. NATO plans to build up Ukraine military leak online. So they can't even control their information. They can't control the secrets. You don't have a military if you can't control the flow of information. And so this is very, very bad for the military. According to senior Biden administration officials, classified war documents that contain secret American and NATO plans to enhance the Ukrainian military before a planned offensive against Russia were posted on social media platforms this week. Well, given the amount of information that we're finding out about the transport of classified documents that was not very well done, it should not surprise anyone, given the criminality of this current administration in this regard, that such plans would be found in the public. So this shouldn't surprise anyone. This is the natural result of loose lips that sink ships. And this is why you have to have a credible apparatus in charge. You cannot have the credibility of central and key component agencies being absolutely decimated in the public, and then still maintain some type of law and order. And we see President Trump making this point. Fed up Trump calls on Congress to defund weaponized FBI and Justice Department. And so You're seeing this called, he's not saying this uniquely, he's saying this at the front of an army of people that are now calling for this. Donald Trump has been targeted by our corrupt FBI and Justice Department since the moment he came down the escalator in 2015 at Trump Tower in New York City to announce his run for the GOP presidential nomination, and he's finally had enough. The former president called on Republicans in Congress to temporarily defund the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation on Wednesday morning, a day after his arraignment in New York City. And so, if you had any question as to why there are certain forces that would rather this individual would not be in charge of the purse strings of a nation, there you have it. How long ago do you think he came up with the plan to defund these departments? Probably some time ago. And so I believe that explains to you all why you've been seeing some of the propaganda warfare back and forth between these two camps for some time. Does it matter to us? Not really. We're watching enemy forces defeat one another. We should just basically continue to worship our Elohim, praise and worship him, glorify his name while he destroys our enemies before us. Nevertheless, don't be naive. The very issues that caused them their destruction could cause yours. This is why we need to observe, is so we can learn, so we don't repeat the foolish mistakes that those who presume have made. Okay? And the judgment of Elohim will fall upon both sides. So there is no righteous side of this conflict. They're both sides proposing things that are abominations before Elohim. So there's no good guys here. All right. And what are they all trying to do? They're all trying to make their way to an exit. And what we're seeing again with the declaration that they're ready for war, this is coincidentally timed. Coincidentally, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're one of those people that believe in coincidences. It's coincidentally timed with FedNow and with the release of their digital currency, central bank digital currency. And lo and behold, they're talking about major conflicts now, major war. To get you all so scared, you have to take whatever they give you and hunker down, everybody. And of course, you hear a lot of clamor about this gold and silver stuff. I hear so much about this. People are talking about this all the time. Gotta buy gold. Gotta buy silver. Every news broadcast, every truther. I can't tell you how many times I've sat there just shaking my head with this. Okay, and here we have 3 congressmen introducing bills to once again back dollars with gold, right? So they think this is the answer. The answer is gold-backed currency. Yes, because now you will trust the currency. When somebody explain to these Muppet heads that it's not the currency, but the guys running the currency we don't trust. Somebody please explain it to these guys because they don't get it. In the lead up to Easter, oh, gee whiz, look at this. In the lead up to Easter, 3 United States congressmen, all Republican, introduced a bill that would once again back the U.S. dollar with gold rather than nothing. And I've maintained for some time that that's not really true anyway. That's again a mental ruse. Because as long as you can take the U.S. dollar down to a gold dealer and buy gold, then it is redeemable for gold. Okay? It's just not redeemable at a federal window, but it's redeemable at a gold shop, right? So as long as that currency translates into, in other words, as long as somebody's willing to trade on a consistent basis, they're willing to trade that money for gold, then it is backed by gold. It's that simple. So this is nonsense that they have manipulated the minds of people for a lot of time, for a long time. And this has been their go-to because now they can play this other mental game with you, right? They change the color of the paper and they go, okay, now it's gold back. No, it's totally gold back. Totally, completely. Gold back. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It always was in the sense that you could always use the dollars or the euros or the yen or whatever, the rubles, to go down to a local gold dealer, and for a certain amount of them, whatever denomination you're offering, there's an exchange rate. And there's a rate that they will take your dollars or your whatever and trade you gold for it. So this nonsense thinking that it had to be done by the Fed in order for the dollar to be actually intrinsically worth anything is just essentially saying, there needs to be a bank of last resort. There needs to be a gold dealer of last resort, so that in the event that no gold dealer in town will take them anymore, at least you will. This isn't exactly the most confidence building kind of way to go about selling your currency, if you really think about it. And let me propose a different thought. And again, since I've kind of gone through most of the news stories, there's one more news story that you probably want to know. This was actually prophesied, if you want to call it that, by the Q boards a long time ago. We heard that this was going to happen. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting that it is in fact happening. Former US President Obama is going to relocate to Kenya. And I literally almost laughed out loud when I read that headline. He's going to be moving to Kenya in June. I kid you not. I did not make this up. I did not write this article. So I thought that was kind of interesting information. Okay. But you see, here we are. You're facing the reality that the actual machinations, the character of these who are proposing to help you with your business, right? Because what is a currency for? It is really just for between two parties. It's just a mechanism of exchange. Oh, and I know what I was going to share. I was going to share, the limitations of gold. So all these people are buying gold, and they're like, if you don't own it, you don't have it. Okay. So let's just pretend that your gold is safe, right? Let's just pretend you somehow have no threats to your gold supply, and you wanting to buy something that's $300, and you have 1 ounce gold coins. This is going to be a challenge. You're going to have to now convert that to currency. Okay. And so the thought is like, well, yes, but gold, no matter what, will always be convertible to currency. Well, maybe. Depends on the circumstances. If people are in dire enough straits to where currency is of no real value, including gold, they may say, I don't care. We're not going to sell our food no matter how much gold you offer, right? There does come a point at which food is priceless. And so, and people would be willing to trade it. But even if that were not the issue, even if there is full willing agreement, people are willing to go ahead and, okay, I'll take your 1/4 ounce of gold for this transaction or whatever. How do they transmit that? How does the person in Florida, my sister in Florida right now, send that to us so that we send her eggs, for example, right? How does that work? How do you transfer it? See the limitations, see the problem? Right away, you run into the problems with it. So you eventually, you got no choice. You're going to have to bow your knee at a system in order to exact that transaction. This is what we need to get in front of, folks. We need to be the ones in charge of those systems, not borrowing one because we couldn't. It's like public or private transportation. We need to have our own transportation, if you will. And this is where, yes, like my sister said, local communities are going to be very powerful. Buying local, very powerful, but also establishing networks. So I see the future of that being local communities that network together, and they network with other networked together communities. So you keep that local small feel, but you have the ability to overlap resources and to help each other. You are going to need a digital transfer system of some sort. You're going to need some form of payment processing that allows the flow of activity to keep moving. This is what built these economies that were so fast and grew so big, is because the number of people and the volume of transactions required that we moved it along. Okay. Think about the verification process for gold. Think about the weighing process for gold. Think about how long each transaction will take. That's highly prohibitive. Okay. Um, and so, as long as on either end of the transaction, you can extract value equivalent to or greater than, the expectation, whatever that is. So, if you get on this end $50, if you will, whatever it is, $50 worth would be in your currency, and you're satisfied with that, the commerce is complete. And so, again, this is where we have to be smarter than the systems that they're offering. And frankly, what I see is a whole lot of head in the sand cowardice, um, where a lot of people are afraid of like, oh no, what are they going to do? They're going to do this to our banks. They're going to do this to our this, do this to our that. Nobody requires you to put your money in their custodial care. I mean, you could get your paycheck, convert it to XLM or Bitcoin or some other form of commerce, or even a different currency. You can even put it in euros or other currency. In other words, you can take dominion over that to where you are not the victim of it. You are now looking at and developing strategies. And as I've said to you, I find people in three states. Either they have no plan, they're in search of a plan, or they're executing a bad plan. Many people are executing a very bad plan because what they're expecting to do is somehow continue to use this Babylonian Egyptian slavery system as their way of escape. I've got news for you. You have got to get smarter than that. These folks are going to get in your way. So, for example, if you go onto a network like Sheklemart, and again, we're still building this out, but you would have instantaneous transfer internationally. You know how powerful that is? You know how important that is for commerce? Business people out there should be right now going, hey, we don't need them for that? You kidding? Really? I didn't know that. Like, well, that opens up the whole new world. That opens up opportunities for us to get things done that don't require the hoops and the red tape that they are famous for and are responsible for restricting your development. Folks, they want to keep you from being prosperous. They want to keep you from doing well. I don't know if you know this or not, but there are very systematic and concerted efforts. And I can tell you just from understanding software and understanding computer capabilities that they are specifically trying to restrict you. And so I believe that Elohim is now about to do the flip. Remember, the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just, and the strength of any currency is the labor of its people. So if we have 500 people that are working together on any project, well, that creates an ecosystem inside of itself. And so this is what, again, they're very afraid of, because once you begin to band together without them being your central currency, see how they want to put themselves right in the middle? If you can go around that, if you will, this is why do you think they're attacking, these other countries? They're going at this because they know that if you figure this out, as these countries have, as entire nations like Russia and China have figured out, they get free. And so that's why they believe they have the high ground, and why I believe that ultimately they will prevail in many ways. But if you thought that the New World Order was going to go away, no, they're just going to take that on and say, now we're going to run the New World Order, So it's not the throne they have a problem with, it's who's sitting on it, right? So now they want to put their guy on the throne and they want to run the New World Order from the East. And you can understand where they feel entitled to that. And while they send creative weapons in the form of chemical weapons, and that's the only thing you could call this fentanyl invasion, especially in the Western nations and most specifically the United States, this weaponization of drugs, this weaponization of addiction, weaponization of poverty, as I said, the weaponization of democracy, basically, by using the holes of it against them. There's no need for a kinetic war. You're dealing with a country that's self-destructing. Within a very short amount of time will basically be itself a beggar nation, because again, having learned only to focus on one or two doorways and being led like cattle, to the slaughter, you have a population that don't know how to think outside the box. The Saints, this is why it's so important for your mind to be renewed. This is why we warn you about things that are coming. We help you think with sort of a macro political view, a 10,000 foot spiritual view, so that you're looking down at earth as opposed to sucked into the details of it. And this allows you to take a moment to step out and say, wait a second, what is money? What is mammon? What is it that we've been tricked into working our lives for? This is what the king warned us about, the deceitfulness of riches. Okay. And so they've weaponized these things against us in order to impoverish the people. Poor people are easy to manipulate. They're easy to bribe. They will do horrendous things for a bowl of porridge. It doesn't bring out the best in people when you have weaponized poverty. It brings out their most disgusting side, because again, they only, it's either this or we die, right? It's either this or we die. So, this now becomes very doable, no matter what it may be. And it could be the most horrific thing you could think of. And we all have heard enough stories to fill in the blank. And so there's this effort to take us down that road, to cause children to be fatherless and therefore victims, to remove the cover of the family, to remove the cover of the household of faith, to destroy pure doctrine, undefiled, that would deliver people from demonic control. All of these things were done as weaponizations. These were not incidentals. These were all a coordinated effort against you. And it is only in that moment that you realize that you are facing an enemy attacking in a coordinated manner, that you begin to respond in like manner. As long as you consider things just a coincidental thing. I want you to think about, something goes wrong at work, another thing goes wrong at the gym, and then something else bothers you as you're driving, and you're going, well, that's too many things. And then you pull over and you pray, because now you're dealing with a warfare attack, and now that changes the circumstances. What happened? You recognized that you were first trivializing those situations as individual incidental events. The minute you began to put together the pattern, your response changed. The minute you began to put together the pattern, your response started to change. In the same way, as you begin to discern the patterns of these macro controllers, you will begin to respond differently in the same multidimensional manner that they're attacking you. And when you recognize that it is not just the people spraying things in the air, they're also putting things in your water. Those same people are putting chemicals in your clothes. You need to wash them before you even wear them, right? Because they have leaching chemicals. Those same people are the people that are getting together to talk about how they're going to poison your food. Those same people, okay, are the people that are putting together economic systems for you to limit your growth under the guise that they're liberating you. right? And so all of these things are things that we need as the remnant to recognize we're the response for it. If you're waiting for somebody else to show up, you're it. You are the response. You are the resistance. You are the remnant. You are the ones that tread upon the enemy. And so now you're going to see a ramp up. You saw in the news, and we emphasized Israel for the last couple of weeks. Just really quickly, just want to mention that Israel is under attack again. And I do believe that you're going to see an increase of warfare there in that theater. Again, they have to bring about this conflict because they have an end they're trying to sell you. And the only way you're going to buy this end is if they set the scenario up in such a way that this end that they want you to buy looks better than this scenario. As long as you have too many choices, that doesn't work. And so stand by for them to try to limit your choices, to give you the impression that those choices are limited, to give you the impression that you are restricted and it's either this or this. And how many know that that's exactly how they ended up pushing very horrific things into people's bodies, was telling them it's either this or this. And you as a believer need to know that that is never the case, ever. You always have the option of saying, I will ask and inquire, because he is my, he's the fourth one in the fire. All right. And so when I ask him, I may get answers that that none of you thought of. Okay. And that is important, that we continue to think outside the box and to do things that help one another, and consider making plans for your brother's prosperity. I keep saying that. I know there are people that question whether or not there are actual folks on the earth that think like that. I can assure you there are. There are people who spend their entire time thinking about how they're going to bless their brethren, or how to make something work, smoother for their brother, or how to make something easier on an interface for their sister. Believe me, I literally watched that effort. So I can tell you that, not everyone is out to get you. Not there. There is a group. There are people like yourselves who love one another, who are actually actively and intelligently working with your blessing in mind, because the bad news that you're hearing is about their systems being destroyed. The difficult news that you're hearing is they're coming apart. Their mafia, if you want to call it that, their control matrix is another word for it, is disintegrating. Its structure no longer holds the underpinnings of society that they thought they could destroy with impunity, have turned out to be important to the development of their structure. So, they taught rebellion. Oops. You probably shouldn't have taught your people to be such rebels. Just saying. You might have created your own enemies inside your own departments. In 2016, the word of Elohim came onto me, and I knew that we had entered a time of the whistleblower and the light bearer. And so we declared it, continue to say it. Light's going to increase. Light's going to increase. And now you're getting revelations on a daily basis that are alone would be, again, in the past would bring down entire administrations. Just this classified document thing in the 80s or 90s would have brought down any of the administrations, without a doubt. It was way too close to Watergate. You can't have this kind of behavior. It would have shut them down. The other things, and that's just one of dozens of things that have come out, and things that were like scandalously bad. And you know what I'm talking about. And so, we have to be very careful about this. We have to realize where we are. So now, one of the things that I believe we have to do is, not only do we need to band together, work together, do our commerce together, connect together in every way, but I also believe that we have to create employment. Some of that has to be remote employment. We have to find ways to get, again, creative, get thinking outside the box, get creative with answers so that people can start shifting their focus and energy. Because remember, any commerce, any system, anything is infused by the people. It is you. You are the energy that make it work. So again, even if there's only 100 people, that 100 people working to work together as, say, vendors in a program, or working together to build something, or working together in a network, are going to make a huge difference, and they themselves supply the energy. This is where wealth comes from. And I believe what Elohim is going to do is not take their wealth. He's going to teach you how to create the wealth that they have been using these systems and these understandings against you. And so that they could control the system. If they control the system, then they really control your wealth. They control your power because you need them to exercise it. And I believe he's going to free you from that. I believe that you should not need anyone to exercise the authority that you've been given. And if it's been given to you, you should not have anyone in your way. Just like if you have $100 in cash and you want to go buy a slice of pizza, you should be able to walk over, hand over the $100, and get your slice of pizza. That's simple. That's simple. Okay? And it should be that simple. And it should be that easy to work and to connect. And so anything beyond that is attempting to control and manipulate you. And I believe that this is going to fail. So I just want to encourage everybody that has been praying for us and has been standing fast in faith. I'm grateful for, I see some of our long-term supporters, especially of the shekel. And you can go to newkingdom.io for the best deals on the shekel is at newkingdom.io. But you can also go to remnanthouse.org or shekelmart.com. Wow. Shekelmart is coming together. Exciting stuff happening over there, folks. I want to encourage you. And if you're a member of Remnant House, we've got some special perks for you. So be on the lookout for an email. As soon as the feasts are over, we'll talk more about that. And I believe that Elohim will bless you and encourage you. And I believe a lot of good things are coming. At the same time that there's going to be their difficulty, is going to be your blessing. So I believe we need to do things in a new way. And I know that he has plans for all of you. Amen and amen. Speaking of the feasts, tomorrow is the last great day. It is a high Sabbath day. And so we will be doing a special broadcast for the high Sabbath, just to encourage and to close the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Those of you that have made it through and completed the entire 7 days, be encouraged. I strongly encourage you to bring an offering made by fire to celebrate that 7th day, and bring a petition before Elohim for the things that you need. You have needs. They are bigger than your seeds. Okay, so plant your seed and pray for your need. I believe he's going to bless you. I believe that he is going to make those provisions for you. I believe that this is, again, a special window where he is inclined to bless, if you will. So take advantage of that. If you're facing a mountain, if you're facing a battle, you're facing a situation where you need his help. Some of you need to liquidate and get away from where you are. You're going to need him to help you with that. This is why it's important to bring that offering made by fire before him as a peace offering before him, to request and to petition. And this is an old understanding that needs to be recovered, because we forgot how to honor him, and people love to run up and ask him for things without honor. And so let me just tell you right now, then you better stand by, believe by faith, hold on, because he's going to move to confirm his word. He'll confirm this word with signs and wonders in your life, you'll have a testimony to share with your brothers and sisters because of the last day of the feast. So honor him, be a blessing, stand in faith for your brethren. So not only look for your own blessing, but for the blessing of your brethren. Those that do that, it's amazing how they are blessed with not only provision, but it's synchronized. Perfect timing. This is the sign that he has got his hand upon you. And so I want to encourage all of you, don't be afraid of what you're seeing. Don't be afraid of the faces of men, and continue to share what you're sharing. Your meme war, you're winning. More and more people are waking up than ever before. We're seeing a harvest of people that are coming into the name, coming out of darkness. Folks, that's all you on social media, on your YouTubes, on your everything. You're sharing stuff. You're shining your light. You're doing what he said. You're doing it. You're doing it. It's happening right now, and I just couldn't be more delighted to watch it, to see it, and that's why I like to sit to. I'm here to encourage you. I'm your cheerleader. You can do it. Come on. I want to continue to cheer you on. And so I don't like it when we get too overwhelmed with news. So you don't want to get too overwhelmed with some of these things going on. Understand that there is threat. That is why he is going to teach you to be nimble, to be mobile, to be agile, right? To be hostile. So you're going to be able to get moving. You're going to be able to earn from anywhere. I believe that's a skill set many people need to develop right now, because they are not going to be able to stay sedentary and work a job like they used to, but you still need resources. So you got to change your skill set. You're going to have to change the way you operate. That includes farmers. Okay. A farmer that's used to taking his goods. Can I just say this? A farmer that's used to taking his goods to, into major production with a store. If he's going to want to stay in the farming business, if he's going to want to transition to the remnant, he's going to now have to use a network to ship smaller quantities to different places. He might get more for his goods because he's no longer selling at that deep wholesale he was forced into, but there's now more work involved. He's got to evolve. He's gonna have to shift, or he's gonna have to get out of the farming business. You understand what I'm saying? Same thing with the trucker. The trucker is going to be like, look, man, I got to figure out how to get, if I can get truck jobs this way over here with these guys and they're shipping stuff left and right, I'm going over there. Okay. I'm going to go work with them because, man, they're moving groceries. They're moving stuff I need. All right. You see how that works? So again, you can't sit back and wait for these things to come be made for you. That's how we get set up. Instead, we have to be the people that put together solutions to start networking together. And then you're going to see, not only are you going to see people doing better, but you're going to see his overt blessing. Folks, I don't know if you understand what it means to have his blessing. When his blessing is on something, all those things that go wrong, well, it's the opposite. Things go right. Things connect. They transmit. They work. And so he wants us to get into his blessing. And that's going to require the dropping of personal agendas. That's not to say that you can't be personally blessed, but it can't be the overriding number one thing. You have to be more concerned about your brother's prosperity. Then you're going to see the blessing. And so if it's not enough to meet your need, it's probably seed. Plant it before Elohim. Believe Elohim to give you breakthrough. Some of you need big breakthrough. Okay. I'm talking big economic breakthrough has to happen for you. Not just initial burst of resources, but an ongoing solution so that you can change the whole way in which you interact, the whole way in which you work. And I believe that those are the kinds of solutions that we need to work together to produce. I'm very, very confident that Shekel Mart will be a massive contributor to that effort. I believe that the remnant have a unique opportunity right now to band together in advance of these storms to begin to work together. And I do believe there's going to be some powerhouse things that he does to gather his people that are going to be amazing. And you're going to want to be a part of that. And so that's me letting you know. Okay. When I tell you you should do something, you should do it. So you definitely want to connect in. And I do believe it's going to be a beautiful thing. I do believe we've got some really beautiful gatherings in front of us. Yeah, there's dark clouds. Yeah, there's war. Yeah, there's rumors of wars, but be not troubled. In the world, we'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. He has overcome the world. And I believe that he has given us the resources in the Ruach, by his spirit, to overcome all these things that we're about to face. So nobody needs to be afraid. And they have actually cleared a path before us by their mechanisms. So we get to take advantage of their own highways and freeways that they built. What the enemy meant for evil, Elohim is turning for good to free people. So don't walk in fear. Instead, be courageous, be innovative, think ahead, get in there and pray, seek his face in this time period, and connect with your brethren. If you're not connected with the remnant, then how will you know the new things that he's revealing and releasing? You've got to stay connected. And I'm so glad for every one of you that are partners with us. If it weren't for your help, if it weren't for your support, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. You have sparked innovation that you are just now starting to catch a glimpse of how determined, the determination that you've encouraged and inspired. So thank you, all of you who have been with us. And I encourage you to join us tomorrow night here on this channel for our conclusion of the 7 days of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And then we'll also see you for our midweek discussion with our brother Jerael Thomas, which I look forward to. It should be a delightful discussion, as it always is. And we will continue on from there. Thank you again for joining us. May Elohim bless each and every one of you. Shalom.